say those two talks are absolutely brilliant. Yeah. So thank you very much, guys. I really enjoyed both of them. Also wanted to say thank you to Anu for putting this on. As somebody who helps out with event planning at Cat & Co, I know that for every one thing you see in this room, there's 10 other things she's had to do behind the scenes to make it work. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak. Just to introduce myself, I'm head of paid search at Cat & Co, lead a team of around 15 people working across around about 25 accounts. And then we're talking about data versus intuition today. But first I want to start with a love story. It's a love story that I'm involved with. So this happened 20 years ago. A couple of the Cat & Co team were still learning to walk, but I was fresh out of uni, looking for a job. I'd done an English degree, and I didn't want to be a teacher, so there was nothing out there for me. So I took a job at a call centre in Warrington, in the north of England. It's one of the biggest call centres in Europe. It's a Vodafone call centre. And it applied to none of my skill set at all. I was no good at talking to people. I was really averse to confrontation, and I didn't know what customer service meant at all. And I remember on the first day walking in, and they had a notice board at the front door showing the top 100 call centre advisors in Europe. And there was a guy at the top called Steve, and I thought, I'm never going to be Steve. This is just not for me. The first 3 months were terrifying. My manager was a really lovely person, but she had little to no interest in my development. And then I realised that I could actually request surveys that had been done for the customers that I'd spoken to. So I started to request these surveys on a monthly basis, and I would start making tables of the areas where customers thought I was doing well, and the areas where they thought that I could improve. And over the next couple of years, I worked really, really hard going through like one item by one item, trying to get better and better. It never became a natural thing for me. It was always a big effort. I kept seeing Steve at the top of this leaderboard, and I thought, I'm going to get Steve. And I remember I got into the top 100, and then I got into the top 50, and I got into the top 20. And then one day, it happened. I came third. I never quite beat Steve. He was a total maverick. Still one of my heroes. But yeah, it shows you just how much power there is in data, just for driving insights, for understanding where the next opportunity lies. And I know that pretty much everyone in this room is a big fan of data. I'm not sure if Ollie's dad is, but maybe not. So I'm just going to take you through a few examples of how we use data at Cat. So this is analysis that we've done of responsive search ads. I'm going to assume everyone in this room knows ppc terminology. We're very happy to explain to anyone afterwards if they'd like to take them through the tests. So we ran some ads unpinned and some ads pinned across several accounts. We found that click-through rate was actually better with pinned ads, and ROAS was actually stronger with pinned ads, despite Google's ad strength being actually worse for the ads where we pinned the headlines. So that was a very interesting insight. The second one was testing keyword match types. So we tested this across a lot of our e-commerce clients in August, September of last year in the run-up to peak. And we saw that conversion rate on phrase was actually quite markedly lower than broad and exact. So we now run most of our accounts with only broad and phrase keyword match types. And then the third one, which I hope a lot of you in this room will be happy about, we had a look at auto-applied recommendations, and I can confirm they do suck. Across 9 Cat & Co clients in Q4 2023, some brave clients allowed us to opt them into half a dozen auto-applied recommendations. We had the team go into every account on a daily basis and categorize all of the recommendations that had been made. As you can see, huge 2.9% of them were useful. Some of them did nothing at all, and a lot of them were actually actively harming campaigns. And we actually shared this with our Google rep as an explanation for why we weren't going to continue with auto-applied recommendations. So very proud of this one. This is not a Cat A test. We don't deal with World War II fighter jets. Has anyone ever seen this before? Cool, that's about the same amount of people in the office. So this is a very simple diagram of a plane, and every red dot represents a bullet hole. And this was analysis that World War II engineers would do when planes returned from the battlefield. And they would look at the bullet holes and think, wow, that's where the plane is weakest. So we're going to patch that up, make those areas of the plane's wings stronger, send it back out to fight again. A very clever man called Abraham Wald came along, and he pointed out, actually, the planes you should be worried about are the ones that don't come back. So you're actually looking at the completely wrong areas of the plane that you need to look after, because it's the ones that didn't even make it back that are actually the most in trouble. And this is one of the ways that data can be really misleading. When data is interpreted correctly and your testing is robust, it can give you clarity, it can give you confidence. Those tables that I showed you, that pie chart that I showed you, very conclusive. We knew exactly what to do off the back of that. But sometimes data takes you down the wrong path, or it can actually halt your progress altogether. Don't know if any of you recognize this guy. This is Odysseus, and these are the sirens, and they're calling to him, they're singing to him, and they're tempting him, but they're bad sirens, and they deal with bad data. So this siren, she deals with not enough data. The middle siren's is the worst of the sirens because she deals with poor quality data. And the third siren deals with noisy data. And all of these sirens are calling out to you constantly. Make conclusions based on not enough data, make recommendations based on poor quality data, tell your client what to do next based on noisy data. And it's a really, really slippery slope, to the extent that our industry has actually given it a name now to try and cover it up. And we call it green shoots. I don't know, has anyone heard this term before? It's basically a term that people in the industry have started using to make conclusions based on not enough data. The campaign's generated 2 conversions. There's some green shoots of success there. What green shoots actually means is maybe it's going to work. But more and more of the time, we're seeing that with the increasing complexity of measurement and the increasing fragmentation of platform data, bad decisions are being made based on not enough data, poor quality data, and noisy data. This man, Tony Fadell, for those of you who don't know, he was co-creator of the iPod, and then he founded a company called Nest, which went on to redesign home thermostats. Very successful businessman. And he talks a lot about the difference between data versus opinion-based decisions. And he talks a lot about something called analysis paralysis, which is where companies, clients, agencies get locked in feedback loops of data-driven decisions that are based on poor quality, not enough data, noisy data. And he says if you look at most companies that are paralyzed, it's because they're trying to turn opinion-based decisions into data-driven decisions. And we see this a lot. We see a lot of our clients get locked in a cycle of indecision because they are trying to make decisions based on data that is not actually there. And we see it as our role to understand when we actually need to say, let's move away from data and move towards intuition as the fastest way to get us back to a data-driven approach. So I want to be clear, at no point in this presentation am I suggesting you should rely on intuition to drive results. Intuition is a method for getting back to data-driven decisions. Just want to talk a bit about what intuition is not. So intuition is not instinct. So this is a man running away from a lion. He has not used his intuition to decide to run away from the lion. He has instinctively run away from the lion. Instinct is a reflex action based on external stimuli. There is no thought in instinct. Intuition is very different. This is Pharrell. For those of you who don't know Pharrell, I urge you to seek out his music. Pharrell is an accomplished musician, fashion superstar, and brand ambassador for Louis Vuitton. And Pharrell is the latest in a long line of people who've been chosen by Bernard Arnault, the CEO of Louis Vuitton, based on his intuition for what the market is doing and how Louis Vuitton can continue to set trends and remain at the forefront of fashion and not fall behind the times. He's very, very good at this. Pharrell's campaign has been hugely successful, but it was not a data-driven decision. It was based on his intuition. This man, Bruce Henderson, unfortunately doesn't seem to have a picture on the internet. I found Tony and I found Pharrell, but Bruce was hiding from me. But he was the founder of the Boston Consulting Group back in the 1970s. And he described intuition as effectively the subconscious integration of everything that you've done in your life. And that includes the cultural and emotional biases of that lifetime. That's why intuition is not the method for success, it is just a tool. If you rely on intuition, you're going to introduce all of the biases and all of the cultural influences that you've accumulated in your lifetime into decision-making around performance, and it's not going to end prettily. So again, we're looking to get back to data as quickly as possible. Here are 3 instances where you shouldn't use intuition. I am hugely guilty of the first one. It's being the magician in the room. So you're in the room with a client, the data isn't there, they're looking for answers, and you decide on the spur of the moment, I'm going to come up with an idea. I've seen this before, I've seen this in accounts before, this is what we need to do next, this is definitely going to work. If they call you out on it, it's incredibly embarrassing. I definitely recommend nobody does this. The second thing is even worse. And I can proudly say that we never do this at Cat A, but I have seen it done in the past, which is distracting people from poor performance by using ideas and reasons outside of the data to justify what you're seeing. Oh, the market is poor. Oh, it rained on the weekend. Fine, but that is an intuition-based judgment. It is not a data-based judgment. The third thing, and this is the most damaging because it's the one that most often gets signed off by the client, is taking the poor quality data that you have, using your intuition to extrapolate what you think is a data-driven result from it, and taking action based on that. But actually that data just belongs in the bin. You shouldn't be basing any of your judgment on it at all. And using your intuition to try and kind of supercharge that data is just going to lead to failure. The way that you need to use intuition is you need to set yourself up to use it, to get back to the data. And you do that using 3 very careful, planned steps. So the first thing to do is, if you're making decisions based on intuition, be honest with each other, be honest with the client. We don't have the data to make this decision, but based on our experience and based on the ideas that we've seen in other accounts, in market research, we can intuitively say that this step is probably the one that's going to get us back to high quality data, back to good decision making. Make sure everyone's aware of what you're doing. Don't try and hide it. Just explain, we need to find our way back to the numbers and this is how we did it. The second step is that by doing that, you are advocating for a different approach. So you're saying, we're going to do something different from the way we've been working before. That can be scary for clients, and it's important that you take them along for the ride. So just explain why you're doing it, and explain you're trying to get back to the numbers. And the final thing as well is not losing sight of the goal. One of the biggest things that I learned when I was kind of going through kind of junior analyst level is that the absolute best PPC practitioners share the same goals as the business that they are working for. An excellent PPC practitioner will be in their accounts every day, optimizing them and doing the best PPC work possible. A truly exceptional PPC practitioner will be thinking, is this work that I'm actually doing contributing to my client's end goal? Am I going beyond doing good PPC work? Am I driving good, meaningful, positive business outcomes for my client as well? And intuition can be a really powerful tool for helping you connect your practice to your client's goals. The good news is, you guys are actually really good at this. You're really, really good at using intuition to get back to data-driven outcomes. And we know this because we have data to prove it. This is a quote from Michael Pratt. So he is a professor of marketing. And he says if you're working in an industry where you've risen through the ranks, your domain expertise will likely better serve an intuitive approach. And all he means in that is the longer you've been doing PPC, the better you will be at using intuition to get back to a data-driven approach. It's all common sense, but it's backed by data, it's backed by scientific studies. 2 studies were done in 2012 by a man called Eric Dane. Again, these will be very common sense, I'm not saying anything surprising or weird here. It turns out that people who play basketball are much better at figuring out how difficult a shot is based only 2 to 3 seconds of basketball footage. So they showed some basketball players mid-shot to some people who play basketball and to some people who didn't. And the people who play basketball are, surprise, surprise, much better at knowing how difficult the shot is. Also, it turns out people who buy lots of handbags are really good at knowing if a handbag is fake or not. This is one that happened to us. This is where we got into analysis paralysis with a client. So this client is called Swift. Swift are a premium sofa business in the UK, and their USP when they launched, we took them from launch, is that your sofa arrives in a box. So it's simple, quick delivery, easy to move the box around and to assemble the furniture really quickly once you've unpacked it all. So we thought, great, like the creative work is half done for us here. This USP is really, really strong. And we started to put together lots and lots of different iterations of this creative based on this same USP. And the data didn't improve over time. It was roughly the same. It didn't matter what kind of messaging we were putting alongside this sofa in a box idea. People just weren't responding to it any differently, no matter what the approach was. We got stuck in this loop for weeks and weeks. We talked to the client loads with multiple calls. We had kind of heads of department coming in, trying to figure out what was going on with it. Just wasn't working out, and we got stuck in analysis paralysis. And then one day we just decided, let's take an intuitive approach. Let's think about those 3 things. Let's sit down together, agree we're going to base our next step on what we think and not on data. Let's think about a different approach to the messaging. And let's think about our client's actual goal as opposed to just doing good PPC. Their goal was to sell more sofas, not to tell people that their sofa came in a box. And it turns out people don't really care that their sofa comes in a box. What they care about is when they get drunk, if they spill wine on it, they'll be able to wipe it up and it will be completely stain resistant. When we launched this creative, pretty much overnight our click-through rate went up by 30% and our CPA went down by 40% at the same order volume. We were able to scale them rapidly from there. But we had to take that intuitive step to get there. Importantly, when we did that, we did it with the understanding that we were coming back to a data-driven approach. We had these numbers, we were able to start iterating again on the creative and understanding where the gains came from. And the more messaging testing we did with this kind of theme, we did start to see CPAs drop even more or stay the same at a higher order volume. So just to summarize, intuition is a tool, it's not an approach, and you need to use intuition to find your way back to data. When the data is available, go with the data. I love data, it's my favourite. Gives you clarity, gives you certainty, gives you confidence. If the data isn't there, don't allow yourself to get stuck and don't fall into the trap of extrapolating from bad, poor quality data. And if you have the expertise, and this is really important, your clients can't do this. You can do it for them. You're the experts, you have the domain expertise, you've risen through the ranks to understand how these things work. If you have the expertise, then use intuition to find your way back to data. Make sure everyone's bought into doing this. And if you don't have the expertise, then I highly recommend that you find a really good agency to help you out with it. And it's the number one way that we found, particularly in difficult market conditions, for clients to continue finding gains when data's not telling you where to go next. So that was everything from me. Thank you very much.